Well, we cannot contain our excitement for this next episode of Tea at the Temple. We have the incredible Elizabeth O'Neill that is joining us this week. She's an energy healer, she is a wellness coach, she is truly incredible. She's a bringer of hope and a liberator of the emotions. And our conversations were just they were just so beyond. I'm finding it hard to find the words now. So grab yourself a cuppa,
Yeah.
and get yourself comfy. Prepare to be wowed.
Yes. Elizabeth O'Neill. What a woman. Oh, welcome, beautiful Elizabeth, into the Temple of Light, joining us for Tea at the Temple. We are so excited to have you join us. And it's just such a pleasure to be in her presence.
It totally is, absolutely. So we
Absolutely.
really want to dive in with a real juicy question and ask you, what brought you to this path?
Oh, that is quite juicy. I feel like this path happened in maybe steps for me, spirals, like sort of. It was. I thought I was already in the path, and then I kept getting put further in, basically. So, as a child, I was very naturally into nature. I used a lot of crystals. My mum was an aromatherapist, so I was naturally gravitating towards things then. Didn't really think much of it. Then in my 20s, still loved aromatherapy, still loved crystals, loved the chakras, but had a normal corporate job. So again, wasn't really pursuing it, wasn't thinking much about it. I did have a big experience that I'll circle back around to when I was a young teenager. With my mom at a Catholic camp that I think is very important. But after I had my son, so I've got 3 kids, so almost 7 years ago, I had postnatal depression, really, really severe. So this was like my second, I think, like the next step in. I'd done this little mini step in. I was on the perimeter. And I found myself leaning on kundalini yoga, exploring why I had a real dependency with alcohol appear. So really looking at where were all these behaviors coming from. I started to realize I really didn't like myself. So I trained in Reiki and lent on kundalini, trained in sound healing, and really worked a lot on peeling all of that back, and was feeling like I'd pretty much nailed it, which we all know is obviously never nailed it, right? And then 2021, I got a shock. I mean, it always is a shock, but I got an advanced cancer diagnosis, and that was basically when I just got kicked into the I guess the underworld, where it was really like, okay, what way am I going to go with this? And I chose to really choose to see it as something to shine light on, perhaps, to understand the metaphysical side of the message. And that was where I think I really have stepped in further. But I still feel now that there's more of the path. I think I could go even deeper with it. I know we all can, but I still feel like there's more to come with it.
Oh, you're such an inspiration, Elizabeth. And I've loved actually witnessing you on Instagram and hearing about your story. And we talk actually quite a lot about Elizabeth. We've both obviously gone through your incredible course of Adrenal Aid and been watching that, which obviously we'll share details on and come back to later on. But I know for me personally, that was a real reflection, because I've been teaching yoga for just over 10 years, but it was when my daughter, this will be just nearly 8 years ago, was born. And that was for me what triggered me diving into sound and to heal myself was postnatal anxiety and that real dark time of trying to find healing modalities and deepen my practice to just try and heal myself and try and make myself feel like I was enough. So I can really relate to that.
Yeah, it is really relatable. And I think it's listening to that and witnessing that and realizing that there's so many others out there that reflect the same stories.
Yeah.
And when we step up, as you step up, as we do in our community, and speak about the shadow aspects of this path and truly share from a vulnerable place, that is when you step into that role as a teacher, and others are then able to activate and unlock those truths within them and actually find a better way. Because through, I mean, I don't know what you'll say to this, but through working with your shadow, going deep into those confronting health challenges that, you know, many of us face, there's so much light beneath that. There's so much learning in that. There is so much almost restoration of the vital physical body in being pushed into that place. I mean, will you share a bit about like your shadow work and navigating that?
Well, before I do, the first thing I want to say, it's very polarizing. Like you do go in and you find this, like you're saying, this deep restoration, and then you feel rejuvenated and you think, I now understand where this is really stemmed from. And then there's these simultaneous feelings of sadness and grief of, even now it's coming up for me, and I actually enjoy it coming up, because you can't do this most of the time in real life, because as soon as you get vulnerable, everybody around you is like, oh, she must be really struggling, let's shut her down, or because people can't handle it. But it's just normal. It's just the grief of the reality of when you look and you think, all of these things that I've done to myself play a role, all of these emotions that I've swallowed down, all of these substances that I relied on, things like that. So it's like a really happy and challenging thing. I personally quite enjoy it though. The shadow side just keeps going for me. I started just by looking at what really was the story under my shadow work got really deep after cancer, and I started to ask, why have you come here? Why have you come here? So I actually, one of the very first things I did, and I documented it somewhere on my social media actually, was I had a conversation so I put 2 seats out, and I sat in one and I tuned in and I connected, and I started to say, I would like you to tell me why you're here. And I switched seats so I would step into being the energy of the thyroid cancer. And I had a full-blown conversation with myself about it, which was very revealing. It was all about putting myself last, essentially. And then I started to tap into personally the energy of thyroid cancer. And it's really all about self-abandonment, is thyroid cancer. It's all about just you and the diminishing of your voice, always feeling like you're coming last, never feeling like you're going to make it. And I have experienced that my whole life, that feeling of being a little bit of like an underdog. And then right when I feel like I've almost figured it out, it's removed. So I could really the shadow work is very necessary, because then you can understand it, and then you can put the actions in place to say, okay, how do I stop abandoning myself? How can I re-find my voice? Yeah.
And is that now weaving into your teachings and the work that you offer out into the world?
Yes. So that's really where I talk a little bit about that emotional liberation. A lot of the people that I work with they're in like remission from cancer. So they will have been diagnosed with cancer. they've taken a conventional treatment, and they've come out the other side, but they've not really dealt with other things, the other side of it. And so we that's where we begin. We begin by looking at we look a lot about ancestral stuff, so what's actually being carried down through their family. So cancer particularly runs in my mother line. So my auntie, my granny, my great granny all passed from cancer. So it's acknowledging that and looking at that, but then also, okay, what stories do you tell yourself? What organ is it in? What type of cancer? And you can link it all. You can find it all very easily before they even go into their shadows. Just by looking at the energy bodies of it, you can find it quite quickly. So yes, it is.
It's such a potent practice, isn't it? Asking the parts of your body, well, initially, what is wrong with you? What's going on with you? And like you say, I mean, that practice of like swapping seats and questioning it.
Fascinating.
Absolutely, so potent.
You can do it for anything. You could do it for a sore knee, right? You can do it.
I do that, but that seems like, yeah, it's small, isn't it? But I do ask my knee what's wrong with it. And it is because I'm exhausted.
Yeah. And it's going to keep doing it until you do what it's trying to get you to do.
Yeah.
And that's the thing with the body that I try to make clear, that the body will eventually say, I cannot do this anymore. And it will deliver you something stronger. And again, people say to me, oh, you're being a bit, no, I'm not. I'm just telling you the truth.
Mm.
We get one body. We get one body. I believe that we go on and go on to do different things, but we have one body, and we should treat it with deep respect. And actually, because I know the more I started to treat my body with deep respect, the more my intuition developed and enhanced. So there's a real we all need to do it.
And it is very much, isn't it? It's that sacred practice. It's honouring the body as a temple, which might sound like a cliched way of describing it, but it is a truth. And ensuring that each and every day you worship at that temple. It's like an act of reverence to the self, but also to the divine as well, if you have that connection. And it's beautiful to like witness that. Would you be able to sort of talk a little bit more to our listeners about your connection to the divine, to spirit, to the goddess, however you relate to that energy?
Yeah. My practice comes really in two ways to connect and relate to the divine. Originally, it was a morning practice. So I would do my kundalini, and that's how it was very sort of, I suppose, compartmentalized. It was, I would do my practice. So that's kundalini yoga I'm referring to there. So I would tune in, pick a kriya. I would do it repeatedly for days, and really experience, I would experience a lot of discomfort in some of these kriyas, but a lot of the time, deep peace, healing of relationships from afar. And then now I still have a daily practice. So I always go, I sit on my mat, I do my kriya. But now I find it has become really woven into my life and with my children. So for me, we have woods right by us. The woods are where I instantly feel a connection with the divine. In fact, after my diagnosis was the first place I went. I literally came home, said I need to go to the woods, and went and lay looking up at the canopies of trees, just like talking, like calling out to them. It's within mantra. I play mantra for my children. It's really in every moment. It's when I use my essential oils, I talk to the oils. It's when I don't know what to do, I just speak out. I call out to my guides. I call out to my grandmother. I just call out. and I recite it, and it's a very open conversation all the time. I remember going down for my scan, and I knew what they were going to tell me, and I was just chanting the Mangalachan mantra, which is the protection mantra. It was, instead of what am I going to do, what am I going to do, I was just heading for that machine over and over, and I just chanted it and chanted it. And when I went in for my surgery, I remember as they put me under, I was just chanting in my mind. And they played mantra for me in my surgery. They took my playlist in. So it's just like a relationship that's just next to you. It's like this is silly. It's like an imaginary friend. Hey, I don't know what to do. Can you help me? You know, I don't know what to do. I'm just going to lie on the grass. And I know there's something bigger with me. Does that make sense?
It certainly does. And that is the key, isn't it, Elizabeth? It's just having that courage to ask and to open up to that wisdom, to that energy, because sometimes we just spiral in that turmoil and we forget that if we just allow ourselves to be still, to open up, so much guidance can come forward. And even in that silence, maybe when we don't always receive the guidance, we certainly feel the holding. We know we are supported. And so it's something so simple to like just ask, but we forget. And that's things that is, you know, obviously for those who are listening can start to do. You have clearly an incredible channel of communication with your body. What would be like your top tips for our listeners to start that connection? Where would you guide them to just initially begin?
Where would I guide them to initially begin? I would guide them probably to sit somewhere with no phone, no social media, and to really connect with what their body is already telling them. So fatigue, a sore knee, a swollen neck, tinnitus, constipation, whatever. I have never met anyone who doesn't have something that they could use, even if they think it's normal. I mean, that's probably a whole other episode, right? But even if they think it's normal, really sit with yourself. Is this actually normal that my hair is falling out? Is it actually normal that I am ridden with anxiety? I mean, the answer is going to be no when you really sit with it. Just because it's been normalized by society, or you have normalized it because you've experienced it for so long, or perhaps you've normalized it because you're overwhelmed and you don't know what to do about it. All of those things, just forget. And I would sit down and connect with your body on what is it already telling you. And then I would start the connection just by saying, okay, very much like I said at the beginning, okay, hair loss, or okay, whatever. I am going to listen to you. I'm here to listen to you. And then I would set the intention of, I am going to wait to see what I should do next. And I'll come back to that. And then outside of that, I would focus on prioritizing your sleep. I would focus on spending time out in the sun. And I would spend time resting and doing things that you enjoy while you wait for the answers to come in, because your body already knows what it wants you to do. And there's lots of ways you can figure that out by, and obviously I'll tell you about this at the end, but like testing and all of these sorts of things. But you already know what you need to do. You already know what behaviors you have that are unhealthy. 99% of people have some form of self-sabotaging behavior. And that is more damaging than most things. Do you scroll on social media and talk yourself down. It's got to stop. You have to get strict on that. Do you have an alcohol dependency like I did? Do you binge on ice cream? Do you shop excessively? You've got something that you're doing that is toxic. And that's where I would actually be honing in, which is obviously coming back around really to shadow work.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't really believe in sort of being wishy-washy about it.
No, it's cut and dry and direct, isn't it? Yeah. Which is beautiful. So that leads us into, tell us about, you know, your work, your offerings, your gifts that you share in this world.
In person, I have some sound healing and kundalini classes, and then I do the occasional one-to-one, because I have young kids. I do the occasional one-to-one here, where I'm combining sound, aromatherapy, maybe a mantra, and usually looking to find what emotions are attached to your energy body. And then online, which is where I spend more of my work time, I would say, I have a course called Adrenal Aid, and it's for a 4-week course, but it really should be longer. I think it should be done slower, but and that really looks at bringing in food, sort of biohacks. There is kundalini in there, and there's journaling, so there's a little bit of the metaphysical exploration there, all around about getting the basics of your health back. So adrenal fatigue syndrome, it's thought that at least 80% of people have this, and it's linked to almost all autoimmune and metabolic diseases. It's a really big deal, but Western medicine doesn't really recognize it yet, although I would say they're pretty close to recognizing it now. And adrenal fatigue syndrome is basically when you've gone through your life and life hasn't really gone the way you've wanted it to. This is the metaphysics of it. And you just feel like you're just going and going and you're just going through life. And I think a good majority of people do feel like that. I think a lot of people don't have a purpose. They don't really know why they're here. And I think that's why a lot of people end up, not everyone, like a lot of people within healing can end up with it because they're giving so much of themselves. There's lots of parts to that. Anyway, we'll go off on a whole thing about adrenal aid. And then I do cancer consultations, or just health consultations, because I'm a functional practitioner. So people can meet with me online. I can run many, many tests. I run about 60 different tests. You don't need to have 60 ran, but up to 60. I analyze them for you, and then I write you a plan, but I bring the spiritual in. So whilst you're given a protocol with your food and your supplements and all of these things to strengthen your body, I'm also saying to you, okay, we need to strengthen your emotions. We need to look at the way you actually have lived and how you're going to live going forward. Basically, how are we going to bring more joy to your life? And then I just started 2 months ago a membership online called Your Luminous Life, and that's combining, I've got some kundalini and sound in there every month, and then workshops, like holistic health workshops, to try and take these massive topics and make them digestible. So we just did mushrooms this month, which was really lovely to do. So yeah, so I really want to blend the two, like health, like the physical health with the energetics of it, and make it really approachable for people.
Yeah. So all those links, all that info about Elizabeth will be underneath the YouTube, underneath the beautiful podcast for you to all check out. So don't forget to do that. And you have got a podcast coming soon, haven't you?
I've recorded a couple of the episodes, and then it went into the summer holidays, and so I've just left it to the side. But yeah, that I would like that. That's all supposed to be. I've done a mouth taping one. I've done an intuitive eating one. Again, to take these things that are all over the internet and confusing And actually, that's another thing that I think about connecting with the divine and your own intuition is there is so much noise in the world anyway. It can get very distracted and it can pull you away from yourself. So I really want to take these big confusing things that people say to me, well, someone said this and someone said this, and people are just sitting, going over and over and over, and just condense it. There's the answer and there's the research. Sort of, now you can action it, and now you don't have to waste so much time worrying about these things.
Because it's very overwhelming. We were talking out when you did some questions on your Instagram stories, and one of the things I was reaching out to you about is just, you know, cleanses and detoxes. That was something that it's always sort of fascinated me, and I'd love to know the science and to really get more deeper into that, because I know that there's obviously that benefit there. But when you go to look online or try and get some advice, yet, like I was saying, you just end up running in the opposite direction and just think, oh, I'm just not even going to try because
people
there's
argue.
so much conflicting information.
Yep.
I'm a bit scared to sort of even try or dabble, because you wonder if you're going to do more harm than good. So you just sort of, for me, so to have something that you're bringing forward, Elizabeth, that just cuts through all of that and is direct and just gives you that information, it's valuable.
Fear-mongering. But I think the important thing here, and it comes back to the whole conversation, is your body will know what it wants to do if you can just let it come forward a bit by asking it what it wants and giving it a bit of silence. Like when I had my cancer diagnosis, and they sat there and they basically list off immediately, get told, this is what you've got. You know, there's someone in the room present, and then they just begin. It's really bad, and this is what you're going to be doing, right? And it's like a business meeting, you know. And I had this full body, like, because I now know the messages that come from but we all get them. And I just knew, I came out and said, I'm not doing that. And my partner was like, why? So I had no facts at this point. None. I just knew my body already said this, you're not doing that. And I trusted it. I trusted my body before anything else. My body, my intuition, whatever you want to say, it's the same thing. It's a bigger picture talking through the same vessel, really. And then I followed the breadcrumbs and allowed the messages to come up in my dreams and things like this. My son today, like, I've asked for a little bit of advice about something. I haven't been taking a particular supplement. I've left it for a little bit. And out of the blue today, he says, oh, I want to make a blaster with boron. Boron is a supplement. Straight, and I knew. I went, okay, yeah. Then I just pulled it back out of the cupboard. Magic everywhere, you know?
Yes. Yeah. And we were only saying this the other day, where we're talking about, you know, just opening to the signs and just allowing yourself to just make sure you are always listening and looking, because the divine is talking to you all the time. It's just making sure that the blinkers aren't on.
Exactly. Gosh, there is so much juiciness in what we have discussed so far. So let's seal it all in, because we definitely need you back on again. There's so much to go into. But we always ask our guests this question, don't we?
Yeah, so we always like to ask our guests when they're new to Tea at the Temple, if you could go back and give one piece of advice to your awakening self, what would it be?
That you don't need to rush it. It's going at exactly the pace that it needs to go at. Just to trust the journey and trust the speed and trust the process. Because I think even with an awakening, sometimes you want it to be quicker. You want to, you know, the human in you wants to have it all figured out. Like I was saying at the beginning, right? Oh, I thought I figured it out. It's going at exactly the pace. It's exactly the way it's supposed to go. Which I find very reassuring.
Enjoy the journey.
Potent.
Enjoy the ride.
Yeah. Buckle up.
Seatbelt on, guys.
Oh, Elizabeth, it has been just such an honour to be in your presence. Thank you so much for sharing your wisdom with us and everybody who listens. It has been an absolute pleasure. And as you were saying earlier, all the links will be below. I highly recommend to follow Elizabeth on Instagram because she's the most inspirational soul, and we just love following you. So thank you so much, dearest soul.
Well, thank you for having me. I've loved it.